And if this is Christmas Day and you're strange enough to be watching my presentation and my session on this happy day, then happy Christmas. And well, frankly, it's that season. Happy Christmas anyway. We're going to have a look at SharePoint's brand new brand center. It's not been out very long. Not that many people have done many things with it, but I've been lucky enough to implement it at one client. And so I thought I'd share some of the learning. Let's get started. I'm Simon Hudson. I'm a Microsoft MVP, have been for a few years now, and I particularly specialise in the Microsoft 365 style technologies, especially SharePoint and the bits that wrap around it. And I do some other things. Probably the most significant are the user group and the Microsoft maturity model. That's probably where I'm best known. I also have listed out some of the places you can get hold of me, no longer on Twitter. Right, so what we're going to cover in this Happy Days Christmas stocking is a bit of an overview of what Brand Center is, if you haven't already looked at it or read the Microsoft stuff, how to get it all set up on your tenant, and then we'll have a look around and do some fun things with it. So, long time ago in a different world, I used to be a global brand manager for a medical device company. And I recognized then, as now, that brands are about more than just logos and colors and fonts and those kind of things. It's much more about what the brand signifies, what it strives for. However, I think that's a pretty big ask for SharePoint to take on. So we're just going to focus on the colors and the fonts and the logos. What SharePoint Brand Center does allow organizations to do is bring some consistency to the way branding is done, especially internally, which has often been overlooked, and lets us do some pretty cool things within SharePoint and within Viva, and to an extent within Office documents, and there's probably more of that to come. So it gives you a central place for your colors, fonts, logos and graphics, and any other brand assets that you've got. And it lets you do some things that you've not been able to do very easily before if you were just an ordinary communication person. And that particularly is around building out SharePoint themes and managing fonts and colors within SharePoint itself. But before we do all that, we're going to need to get SharePoint up and running on your tenant, and that requires a trip to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Let's do that. All right, here we are in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Note, not the SharePoint Admin Center. You don't set up Brand Center within the Admin Center for SharePoint. You do it in 365. It's as simple now as going to Settings, Org Settings, and down in the list, about halfway down on my screen, we've got Brand Center. Simply click that, and I've already set mine up. You'll have a slightly different screen if this is your first time, but you're going to do two things. You're going to either apply Brand Center to an existing site that you're already using as an asset center or something like that. So if you've got one you're already using in this way, feel free to add your Brand Center capabilities to that existing site, or you're going to create a new one, which is what I've done here, and I've named it Brand Center, in my case using European, not American spelling. And then there's a second feature within Brand Center. Apart from the main site, there's a set of additional back-end capabilities which do the things like app and theme management. And that's the Brand Center app, and that's going to have its own URL as well. Which is a sort of sub area off the main Brand Center. So get those set up. I would copy those two URLs down because you're going to use them later when you're setting up your main SharePoint environment. I'm not going to get into that, but top tip is copy those URLs while you've got the chance. And that's it. Give it a little while, and all of that stuff's going to be running on your tenant. All right, let's take a look around Brand Center. Here's mine. It's slightly modified from the way it comes out of the box. So when you install Brand Center, it's going to create a whole site for you, unless you already applied it to an existing site. And that site's going to have a home page with a bunch of web parts that create a reasonable look and feel and some useful ideas. It's going to come with a bunch of predefined pages, which are actually trying to prompt you into setting up things like your brand values or stuff like that. And it's probably got some nice look and feel, but it's the Microsoft default look and feel, not like the one I'm showing you here, which has already got my NoviaWorks theme applied to it. But this is what you get. You get some kind of a page with some assets and web parts on it that you can now go ahead and modify to your heart's content. And it's just a normal Microsoft SharePoint site. These are just pages. Use all the same features and components and skills that you've got to modify these to do whatever you need it to do. In my case, I've done a few gentle tweaks. I've put in a link to my asset library where my images and logos are, something I use quite a lot. I've added a link to a quick link to a page with my colors and fonts on it, because sometimes I need to look those up. Until I had this, I kept those things stored in OneNote. Now I keep them in SharePoint. And I've also linked to a pre-existing page that I had, which has got our business principles, our culture, and that kind of stuff in it. Further down the page, I've then got some views of libraries and other things. It's not too critical what you put on here, but it gives you a sense of what Microsoft gives you out of the box. However, there are a couple of things that are worth drilling into. Let's go and have a look at some of the pre-built libraries. I've got more libraries already set up than Microsoft provide out of the box, but there are a couple of cool ones. Let's jump straight into this image library. Again, I've already pre-populated my library with the kinds of folders that I already had with my content in, so it won't look exactly like this for you, but it will come with a few folders probably, which you can then go and extend. Again, it's just a SharePoint library. Do with it as you will. I'm sure that different people will think of different ways to manage their various brand assets, but I've done it this way. I've got I guess my logos, which are the main thing that you'd expect to see there. I've got some staff pictures. Because I have to pull these out all the time, I've got in a set of my badges and MVP logos and those kind of things in here. And then, well, you can see for yourself other components that I've used to create a information architecture around my brand assets across the wealth of different things that I do. So build out your core brand asset library however you like. With the client that I've been working on for the last couple of months, I've taken a slightly different view. I've got one library just for their logos and deliberate brand assets, the kind of sigils and graphic artifacts that are explicitly to do with their brand. And then I've created for them a separate library with other images, the kind of things they use to create pages on SharePoint or put illustrations into news articles or documents. So they've got two separate libraries, both of which are organization asset libraries. In my site, because we're a simpler company, I've combined all of those into one. Let's take a look at another one of the default libraries in the Brand Center. In this case, the template library. Again, my library is going to look a little bit different to yours because I've done some column formatting to separate out some different types of content in there. Normally, you would only have those things which are defined Microsoft Office templates in here. So DocTs, so DOTs, like this one, maybe PowerPoint templates, there's POTXs, and probably some Excel templates, XLSTs. For reasons which are too complicated, I've got some of the documents in here as well. So I've separated out the ones which are explicitly Microsoft Office template types. So the reason that this is interesting is if you put those Office template types into this library and declare it as an organization asset library, you can then access these everywhere on your tenant within Microsoft Office. There's a bit of subtlety about this, and there's a blog I've written because it's too complicated to go into now. But the bottom line is templates you put in here become available in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint for all of your staff. And that's something we've been crying out for years. So it's a really useful library to be able to populate with whatever templates you use across your organization, while giving you the power to be able to manage those templates as a communications or marketing specialist, or whatever your internal role for looking after those templates might be. So all the benefits of version control and the other great things that SharePoint can do. So we've looked at my asset library with my logos and in my case some images. We've looked at the template library, both of which are organization asset libraries. You can add any other libraries in here as you like. So I have a general documents library, I've got a brand strategy library, and I have a media library. The media library I also declare as an organization asset library. And you can spot that I've done that because here on the end, you can actually see my content delivery network as well. We won't go into that in this session though. It's not very Christmassy. So here we are back at the root of our brand center. The brand center has another trick up its sleeve specifically for site owners. I'll say that again. If you're a member of a site, you don't have access to this, but if you're a site owner, you have this additional thing hidden away in the cogwheel. And as we mentioned when we were setting up or turning on Brand Center, there's this back-end app called Brand Center. I think the name's a bit weird, but anyway. So we're going to click on that, and that's going to take you into this app. Here we go. Right. Straight away, you can see that there's some stuff around managing your brand. These are the things I mentioned earlier on about being able to manage your fonts and brand colors. I have a couple of fonts which are completely standard across NoviaWorks. One is Aptos because it's easy to use the Microsoft fonts or their recommended fonts. I also use this Gravure font. So what I've done is loaded these fonts here into SharePoint, and that can make them available to everybody else to download if they don't happen to have those fonts on their machine. So first of all, it's a good way to be able to say, here are our corporate fonts, go and get them and install them. The other thing it does is it makes these fonts available to SharePoint. So for the first time, without any really heavy mucking around, ordinary people can add their corporate fonts and use them in their SharePoint environment. That's a great move forward. The second thing you can see is brand colors, and it's the same story. I can load the brand colors here into the SharePoint site and make them available elsewhere in SharePoint. Let's have a look at those. First of all, fonts. It's really simple. There's a simple mechanism to upload your fonts directly into this, what is to all intents and purposes a customized SharePoint list or library. So here are the fonts I've loaded. I could add some more. I'm not going to do that, but I could. And as soon as I've loaded them, they're available throughout SharePoint. Right now, it's only SharePoint. These are not deploying the fonts to individual computers, nor is it making the fonts directly available to Office applications. But you can go through a process of downloading them from here if you're a site member and adding those to your computer if that's what you want. There is a big caveat here, and important if you're going to play around with this, is right now it's impossible to delete fonts that you've loaded into SharePoint. It's a known weakness. Microsoft tell me that they're working on it, but don't go just loading fonts willy-nilly. Be really careful because once they're up here, you can't remove them. What you can do, thankfully, is hide them. So if you have loaded fonts that you don't want to have people access, it's easy enough to go and turn individual fonts on or off. Just like that. So that particular font has now been disabled for general viewing, but I can go and turn it back on again should I wish to do so, which I do. Let's have a look at the other thing I said we should focus on, the brand colours. I simply click on See All, and there is a list of my corporate colours, the ones which we use across Novia Works. This time it's a little bit safer. I can add additional colours. There's a nice colour picker. You can poke in your hex code or RGB colours and give it a name. We'll come back to this in a minute. I won't show you the full details because there's a fun thing we're going to do in a minute. Note also, and with a slightly better interface, there's an option here to make a colour available or not available by the visible switch. So it's as simple as clicking the Add Colour, type in or select your brand colours and save them. That's essentially the set of features, but perhaps we ought to get some experience actually going and doing something with it. So why don't we build ourselves a nice Christmas themed SharePoint theme? The first thing is going to be to pick your theme colours. Now, if you're anything like me, you have absolutely no design skills, so I'm of course going to ask Microsoft Copilot to assist me with that. And I've already prepared a prompt. It reads something like, Copilot please, because we're very polite in England, create a 3-colour palette recommendation for a Christmas SharePoint site theme with hex values. And importantly, because we want to be able to match those up with the SharePoint theme colours, advise where each colour should be used in the theme: primary colour, text colour, background colour, accent colour, and ensure that the theme meets accessibility guidelines. I'm going to go and run this prompt, and then we'll use that to go and build out our new Christmas theme. Of course, no Microsoft 365 presentation is complete without having some element of Copilot. I've gone straight into the browser interface here, and I've copied and then pasted that prompt that I showed you in the previous slides. There's many other ways of getting into Copilot. It's there in the browser, it's there in the sidebar of the browser. I've got it running in WhatsApp, it's in my Office 365 portal, it's just everywhere, but I've gone into it directly. I don't need to have the business version of it here, so I'm not turning on work, I'm just running it in the web. I've put my prompt in, let's run it and keep our fingers crossed that it's talking to me today. Okay, right, here we go. We've straight away and nice and quickly generated a nice Christmas themed palette. Right, but I want to get those into my brand center. Perhaps a good way to do that will be to use this nifty feature in Microsoft Edge to actually run 2 tabs side by side in a single browser. So let's go down into my Brand Center Brand Colors app and add some of these colors that it's created for me. You can see that in Copilot, it's generated a few different themes: a classic one, a winter wonderland, a cozy Christmas, etc. In Brand Center, I'm going to add a color. Let's have a look at what this classic Christmas is. So I'm going to choose that hex code, paste it in over here, and give it my name of primary color. But I like to do this. I've got some naming syntax that I tend to use, which goes something like fire brick primary. So I tend to use my theme color name followed by its purpose. I'm going to let it be visible, and I'm going to save that. There it is. That's been added to my list. Let's add the next. Don't need to add the text color because it's just plain white. That's always available. But we'll see that in a minute. I'm going to add this exciting green color. I'm going to call this one Holly Green, and this is my background, leaving that one as visible. And we'll add my third color. There's always three colors in a standard SharePoint theme set. There's my gold. I can live with that. I might have made it a bit golder, but anyway, we'll call it Christmas gold, and that's my accent. And for once, my typing is all good, so I'll run with that. And here are my three new theme colors, and they're all visible at the moment. So that's great. I'm done with Copilot. I mean, you could go ahead and try some of these other ones out, but for time, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to jump out of there, and we'll go and see what we can do with these colors now. I've added them to my brand color area, but there's another section lower down in the brand center, another part of the app that we haven't explored yet, and that's applying your brand. Let's go and do the SharePoint one. You can see there's one for Viva Connections as well, much the same. It's already got my font packages set up, so that's lovely, and I'm going to use one of those. I'm not going to tell you all about font packages on this session. Basically, it's just a way of saying, here's a set of fonts that work together for different purposes. What I want to do is create a new Christmas theme. You can see I've got one I prepared earlier, but I'm going to create this new one that we've just done. So let's do new theme. Now, some of you may be familiar with this. This is a component that used to exist, and probably still does exist, as a completely separate Fluent UI app online, somewhere in the browser, in Microsoft's toolset, for building your own SharePoint themes. But now it's been properly integrated into the SharePoint Brand Center. And it's as simple as this. Choose your primary color. Well, handily, I've chosen my primary color and I've called it primary. My text color, I'm not going to choose one of my standard colors. I'm going to add a new color, and it's white. So there's my code for white. And that one isn't stored as a standard color because, you know, white's always available. My background color, which we said was holly green. You can see how now adding in my naming convention, which I didn't do with my original brand colors because it doesn't work like that, but you can see how that naming convention makes it really easy for me to pick the right colors for SharePoint. And you can see the preview updating as we go. Whether we like it or not is irrelevant. Let's add my accent color. And we're good to go. It's giving me a bit of a warning around some of my contrast ratios. Even though I asked Copilot to be good, it's got some issues, but we'll live with that. I could go away and tweak this further some other time if I wanted to. I'm going to call this Christmas theme 2. I'm going to try and do that again by actually typing in the right box. And I'm going to make that available. So again, having created a theme, I can make these themes visible or not, just like we did with the colors and with the fonts. That's great because it means I can create themes that we maybe use as a seasonal theme, as in this case, make it available to people from the 1st of December, turn it off again come the 1st of January, and do the same thing with campaign themes or whatever else we want to do. So here we have a exciting new Christmas theme. I'm going to save it. It is available, and it's now made available with my other themes here in my theme set. I guess there's one last thing to do, which is to go and see what it looks like with the themes applied to a site. So let's go and do that just to finish this off. I've jumped into a site elsewhere on my SharePoint environment. It's connected to a hub site, so it's automatically picked up an existing hub theme, but I want to change this one, give it that Christmassy theme that we wanted. And as most of you will probably know, that's as easy as going up to the cogwheel, assuming you are a site owner, clicking on Change the Look, pick theme, and as I said, it's connected to my hub site, so that's not going to let me change anything. What I need to do, in actual fact, is disconnect this one for these purposes from the hub. So let's do that. The point being that if I wanted to apply this to a whole bunch of sites, I can do it just to the hub sites and it will flow all the way through. But in this case, I don't want to mess up my other SharePoint sites. So let's do the change the look theme. Right, here we go. Here we can see a bunch of my existing brand themes. And here are the two Christmas ones, one that I created in preparation for this session and the one that we've created today. And I can preview both. Interesting that they're quite similar, but then, Copilot. We're going to run with that one. And there is my EntrePoint site, fully rebranded, not as accessible as I would like. I'd probably want to go back and do something about that, but it has been updated. Terrific. Right, before we move on, there is a relatively new feature. This genuinely wasn't available when I tested it a week ago. You know how things change. But there is this new site branding capability. And this lets us go and do much of those same things that we just explored of creating themes and installing font packages on a site-by-site basis. So this can override the themes that have been created within the branding center and let site owners apply their own themes instead of one of the defined corporate ones. It does have the ability to copy from another site, which is quite nice, but it's a way of creating themes using the same set of tools, but at a site owner rather than an organizational level. Time to wrap this up. I actually rather like Brand Center. I think it has some good functionality. It's got some tools that were really denied to ordinary users as opposed to the technical people previously, and it shows a direction of travel that is encouraging. It lets us do some things to SharePoint that we haven't been able to do that easily before, and it lowers the bar to entry to creating interesting looking or hopefully good looking sites. Has got some issues. So the gotchas. Well, the first one, as I mentioned, is you can't remove fonts. It'll be great when they fix that, but for now, beware. The second is, at the moment, there is just one brand center. You can't have multiple brand centers, and that means that some organizations that have got sort of sub-brands or big multiple divisions, divisionalized organizations that need to be able to have discrete brands for different parts of the organization can't. We're told that that's coming, but right now it's a single brand center. You saw that last feature where we can allow individual sites to create their own themes. There are no Microsoft 365 admin controls about whether people can or can't do that. And that's going to cause some organizations a problem. You may not want them to be able to deviate in some cases from the core theme, but the site owners can choose to do that. Hopefully they'll fix that one too. And right now, there isn't very wide integration with the rest of the Microsoft 365 stack. I really want to see this stuff being rolled out into other parts of the 365 tenant applications and also rolled into Microsoft Office itself beyond the template capability. But we'll see where they go. The other thing is asset libraries. I've mentioned those several times as a really important way of being able to deploy things like logos and templates and other capabilities that you've created using these asset libraries across the entire part of SharePoint. It's great, but you still need to use PowerShell to do it. And I think the kind of people who are doing the brand stuff, the theme generation, may not have those PowerShell skills, and even if they do, they're unlikely to have been given the admin rights necessary to run them by IT. So right now, you need to go and talk to IT anytime you create a new asset library or need to make a change. I think that this is a key thing that should be a Brand Center app feature, and we're waiting for Microsoft to fix that. I will show you the PowerShell to be able to do some other things, which is below on this slide, but I've got a whole blog article on the Brand Center, which has got the PowerShell for doing those organization asset deployments. But a question that does come about is, well, what if I want to be able to push my new themes to all of the sites on the SharePoint tenant? And again, you can't do that easily today. That's another PowerShell interaction. Here's the code for it, or indeed to remove those themes. But once again, you need to be able to talk to your IT people to run those, I suspect. So, a couple of sets of gotchas. In summary, I think the Brand Center provides a good user experience. It allows you to share assets and other things, especially around your brand values, those kind of capabilities, your tone of voice, your brand manual, all those useful things across the whole organization. Something which isn't done very well in most cases in the organizations I've been involved with. So I think it's really good from a user point of view to be able to do that. It's also really good for the brand team themselves. They've got a set of tools now that let them better manage their brand capabilities. They can build their brand manuals. They can deploy the logos and assets and get them signed off and all those good things. They can build and run campaigns and brand campaigns. They can better manage corporate templates in a way they've never really been able to do before, and they can push those site themes out to the entire SharePoint environment. So I think that's really good. If you want to go deeper on any of this, I did an extensive article a couple of months ago drilling into this. There's a link there, and there's the QR code if you want to grab a quick screenshot of that. Use your phone, get that code. Either way, go and have a look at Brand Center, have a play. If you're interested, ping me on one of those social media places. Let me know what you think. That's it, all done. Thanks for bearing with me. Have a fantastic day and speak to you at conferences or online or wherever.